All yours. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this webinar organized by the Titan Project. It is my pleasure to welcome you here today. So this webinar is organized by Edward from EFF-CoP, and unfortunately he's in a train strike, and it is my pleasure to support here because as my role as director at EFF-CoP Europe, we support and coordinate the Titan Project. And I'm especially pleased with this webinar because we have really great guests as usual. We will have two presentations. We will have a presentation on the eradication of food fraud by Professor Saskia van Ruit. And we also have a second presentation done by one of our consortium members, Dr. Maijaliisa, will be presenting on the new guidance to protect children from harmful effects on unhealthy food marketing. And afterwards, as usual, we'll have a discussion in different breakout rooms regarding these both presentations. Both presentations fit very well with the Titan project. As within Titan, we have four different key areas of expertise that you see here on the screen. One is linked to enabling consumers to make informed choices. So both presentations fit very well in this key area of expertise. We then also have three other, which are more about facilitating the food supply chain, the sustainability of it, the implementation of new innovative technologies, and also taking the food system approach. If any of these key areas of expertise are really close to your research areas or interest, you can follow them even closer by joining up on the network of expertise in this network. So it's really a unique opportunity to be part of this collaborative community of experts. You get information about the Titan project, but way beyond information by the Titan project. It's also a way opportunity really to extend your network and get information of early access to all the multimedia and communication coming out of the project of Titan. But we also, like in this webinar, collaborate with other projects, like Saskia will talk about. So altogether, we can shape really the future of the food system. To give you even more excited about this network of expertise, I'll show you a little bit more of examples of what you can get. So you can also sign up for the newsletter of Titan. And here I really want to highlight a little bit the award that Maiki recently got. See, last year she really contributed to the Nordic nutrition guidelines in Finland. And because of all the good communication she does around this, and she should keep on doing, she was received an award from the journalists in Finland. So congratulations, Maiki, on this. So all other news around the project are also shared in this newsletter. Edward and the whole team of EFF-CoP and the consortium also selects out really relevant publications that you get access to this newsletter, but also on LinkedIn, there's a lot of information available. So really a good source of science-based guidance and information. And with this, I'm going to stop sharing the screen and I will hand over first the word to actually Maijaliisa because she has to teach. So we switched the order a little bit around of the webinar. So Maijaliisa, I'll give the floor to you to present your work.
Thank you. I hope you can see my screen here.
We do.
And thank you for a very nice introduction. And regards from Helsinki, Finland, where we are having a very nice and sunny day today. And now, during the next 20 minutes, I'm providing you a quick insight how we develop new guidelines to protect children from the harmful effects of unhealthy food marketing. Unfortunately, I cannot stay long enough to hear the outcomes of your discussion, but I believe that some team members from my team are present and they have, especially Satu Kinnunen has participated in this very same project, so she can comment if needed. So, to start with, regardless of the country's economic situation, our current environment really supports unhealthy choices over the healthy ones. And several systematic reviews show that the high marketing influence children's food intake. And actually, the children's preferences for marketed food products, they do increase. And this is especially harmful among children, since we know that dietary habits that are formed in childhood, they often persist into adulthood. So as I mentioned, the current food environment, it really challenges our self-regulation, and our self-regulation unfortunately easily loses the battle, and the environment promotes the development of overweight and obesity. And there are some estimates from Finland. The overweight, without people living with overweight and obesity is currently increasing, or it has been increasing for some time, and it's especially alarming that it's increasing among children, and there is a bit sex difference in many Western countries, the similar way as in Finland, that there are more boys living with obesity and overweight than girls. Also, another threat for our well-being, our children's well-being, is the inequality. That means that children's food consumption and nutrient intake, especially the consumption of healthy foods and unhealthy foods, they are associated with the family background, the way that the families with low economic status and low parental education, coming from certain residential areas, and the big family sizes, they usually have poorer diet comparing to the other families. So from that basis, we also know that children are particularly vulnerable to the effects of marketing. And it's a alarming thing that many children, most of them, they do not even recognize that the promotional purpose of advertisements. And this ability usually develops by the age of 12 years. We are living in the world where we are surrounded by digital technology, and the marketing via this digital technology has increased enormously, and especially among the adolescent children. And we know from the studies that majority of food products that are marketed to children, they are unfortunately unhealthy. And we already talked about the low SES families, but this also matters in terms of food marketing. Children from lower SES families in Western countries, they are more exposed to food marketing than other children from higher SES. That's why we think, and we do hypothesize, that restrictions of food marketing can be expected to reduce health inequalities, which actually should be studied. There was a big study comparing 22 countries in which there was a restriction of television and radio marketing of certain unhealthy foods, and it clearly reduced the sales in those countries. So there is evidence that these restrictions work. So that was the scientific background from the study evidence currently available. But what was the background for us to start developing these guidelines? In 2003, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, it required that state parties would develop a comprehensive action plan to ensure the realization of children's rights. So also in Finland, for this reason, the parliament established a national child strategy, and it was published about 4 years ago. And the current Finnish government approved the implementation plan for this strategy. And last year, especially, they wanted to name a working group developing the guidelines for food marketing targeted at children. And the update work was done by our working group at the University of Helsinki. We were operating under the governance of Ministry of Social Affairs and Health, and also some other ministries like the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. A representative from them was sitting in the steering group. So we had different phases in this work. First, we looked at the background papers, or the most important background papers for our work, which included the WHO recommendation for marketing to children. And then at the same time, we were lucky because Norway was doing a similar thing, and we were kind of a bit behind them in our developing work. So we were closely following, especially very closely reading their legislative proposal that they published. And then we used the results from our EPELI project. I will tell more about it a bit later. But the most challenging thing was to define the foods that needed to be restricted. And in that work, we also followed WHO's guideline. They had a specific nutrient profile model, which we used as a basis. And then we also wanted to include the Finnish heart symbol criteria in our own cutoffs. We come back to that as well later. And then we produced the draft version, which went to the public consultation for 4 weeks. And we especially invited different stakeholders, many of them representing food industry. We invited them to comment on our initial guideline. And after public consultation, we revised especially the wording, and also some contents were improved, and then we published our guideline last December. So this is the paper I already mentioned. This is the WHO's updated recommendation or a policy paper to protect children from the harmful impact of food marketing. According to this paper, children of all ages must be protected from marketing of foods high in saturated fatty acids and trans fatty acids, and also high in free sugars and salt. In Finland, there is not a big problem that food would contain high amounts of trans fatty acids, so we left that criteria out from our own criteria because it's really not a problem in Finland. Also, the guideline, according to WHO, should be mandatory. There should be a clear definition of foods to be restricted, and it should sufficiently cover all the advertising methods and channels, and that this is actually a challenge nowadays. And as I already mentioned, Norway was doing the same thing. In Finland, we have had since 2012 a self-regulatory system, and it was implemented more than 10 years ago, and actually food industry was very much in favor of that. They were informing us that it is enough and they are following it closely. However, it has faced significant criticism from health authorities and civil society organizations, and mainly for 2 reasons. Actually, there is a lack of meaningful sanctions, and I think what is even more critical, that it fails to protect adolescents over 13 years of age. So it's fully leaving this vulnerable group completely exposed to aggressive marketing of unhealthy foods. And this is the EPELI project report, which I already mentioned. This is our own project in which we were comprehensively assessing the current marketing of unhealthy foods to children and young people. We documented the marketing of foods, and we analyzed the consumption patterns of unhealthy foods and evaluated the current regulatory framework. And we could establish in this project that, for example, the marketing and the consumption of foods differed by the family background. And we demonstrated that more strict regulations were necessary, and particularly to protect the children, between 13 to 17-year-olds, which was the same as the WHO was actually mentioning. And we noticed that that age group is actually especially vulnerable because they face extensive exposure to digital marketing, and at the same time the children are gaining at that age more autonomy in their purchase decisions and often having their own disposable income. So these are the factors that make them a particularly valuable target for food marketers. And also, we found out that unhealthy food must really be clearly defined to be able to have an effective guideline. So this is what we aimed for. We aimed for to have a guideline which is clearly defining that marketing of unhealthy foods should not be specifically targeted at children, and then it should include clear definition of foods not to be marketed. Besides this guideline, of course, all other regulation generally concerning marketing must be taken into account. So we published this on the Child Strategy website, and it's very soon available also in English if somebody wants to have a look. But a little bit more about how to define unhealthy food. A central criticism of restricting the marketing of unhealthy foods is that individual foods actually are not clearly healthy or unhealthy, but rather the healthiness of a whole diet is the key. And I fully agree with this. But still, we nutrition experts, and also I believe other experts, we think that foods, they have different effects on the health impacts of the diet due to their nutrient content. So we defined that food can be considered unhealthy if it contains a lot of saturated fat, sugar or salt, or little dietary fiber. However, in addition to this nutrient content, the way food is used, it also matters. Foods that are intended for snack type of eating can be considered harmful, especially to dental health. And when we started this definition work, we took the WHO's nutrient profiling model as the basis for defining unhealthy foods. And they have a product group specific nutrient criteria for unhealthy foods. But we needed to modify this to better match the Finnish food selection. And we also, in that, we used the Finnish heart symbol criteria. The Finnish heart symbol, which is shown here on the left side of the slide, is a product group specific criteria for foods that are, so to speak, a better choice in its food group in terms of nutrient content. And it's very well known and commonly used in Finland. And there is a specific expert group following all the new food products, comparing the nutrient content against the criteria to see whether the food can get this heart symbol. So those were the basis for our definition, and also we were looking what Norway did in their own development work. So in the end, we had criteria for 21 food groups. So the main basis for the grouping was that all foods, they must belong to some food group. And if we couldn't easily find a suitable food group, then the most applicable product group was selected. And this actually required the most amount of work within our working group, because we did have long discussions in setting some food products. So the one thing to remember is that the guidelines, they do not apply to foods that are specifically designed to supplement the diet, and especially the nutritional needs of children under 3 years of age. age. And this means that, for example, infant formulas or weaning preparations are not included. So there are 4 food groups that should not be marketed at all for children, and you can see them marked in red here. And then for all the others, we have like a food or product category specific criteria for restricting marketing. There are 2 product categories shown here, like confectionery products. And for this group, the criteria is that all products should not be marketed for children. And then there is a savory snack, and you see that the criteria is that if the product has no free sugar, no sweeteners, salt, 0.25 grams or less, and fiber 10 grams or more, it can be marketed, otherwise it cannot. Besides this food group or product group specific criteria, we still needed to define when we consider that the marketing is targeted at children and when it is not. And of course, it's based on the overall impression, but here are some examples of what marketing would be targeted at children or what marketing we consider as specifically targeted to children. First, of course, we have to think about the product itself, whether it's something typically used by children or whether child-appealing elements have been used in the product design. For example, in the packaging, as you see on the right-hand side, picture made by using AI. And also, child-appealing elements could have been used in the content of the marketing. For example, other entertaining elements are used in marketing besides the product itself. Sometimes there are some add-ons that have been used, like accompanying toy or collector series have been attached to the marketing. And also the timing and place of marketing should be evaluated, whether it occurs in such a way that children can be particularly exposed to it. Clear examples of that could be, for example, the events aimed at children. So in the digital environment, the line is much more challenging and difficult to draw, but there too, marketing in channels frequently used by children or adolescents can be considered targeted at children, especially if those contain child-appealing elements that are mentioned here. And finally, there's one very difficult area as well. If the advertisement encourages adult to buy the product for a child, it's also counted as marketing targeted at children. And then we, as I mentioned, we had a public consultation and we got comments from 50 stakeholders, of which nearly half were representatives of the food industry or companies. And most of them did agree that it's important that unhealthy food should not be targeted in marketing for children. But then there were opposing opinions about how the guidelines should be established, whether it should be legislative or not, as shown on the right-hand side. I'm almost finished, so here is one advertisement, or actually this is news in Finnish, but this was something that made us very happy. Shortly after we launched our new guideline, there's one good example what happened. Lidl removed all the cartoon characters from children's juices shown in the picture. So it did have immediate effects on some packages. And here is the background literature for you. If you are more interested, I can share this whole slideshow for you as a PDF. And finally, I would like to acknowledge my wonderful research group who is always collaborating with me on all matters. Thank you. Let me stop sharing. Here.
Thank you very much, Maijaliisa, for sharing this nice presentation and this overview. I'm checking if there's any questions. So there's at the top during the presentations, don't hesitate to use the Q&A function of Teams. I don't see any question yet so far.
Can I comment that if there is any questions that I do not have time to answer today, I can answer by email or anything. And Satu, as I mentioned, might be there in the audience. So she knows this work as well as me. Thank you.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And indeed, the recordings will be made available on the Titan website, so you will have also all the slides and the contact details of Maijaliisa as well. And maybe to let people know, so indeed, I didn't take the opportunity to present Titan, but Titan is in Horizon Europe, funded by the Commission. And in that project, Maijaliisa is also contributing to one of the pilots, because in Titan we are developing and supporting the development of at least 16 pilots, all linked to digital technologies to enhance transparency across the food supply chain. And in that project, Maijaliisa is together with us developing indeed a tool, a chatbot to address children and give them information about this. So also for that pilot, you can contact Maijaliisa, but she's already off. So don't hesitate to still put your Q&A session. And I see that our next, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Maijaliisa. And our next speaker is already ready. Like Ilse, she is also coordinating a big project. Saskia, I'll let you introduce yourself, the project. So thank you very much for being here with us. And you have another 30 minutes to really inspire us with your thoughts about food fraud and how to eradicate it. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Isabel. I hope that...
Yes, we see them. All good.
It's visible. Good. So thank you very much for inviting me to present the European Food Fraud Community of Practice this morning. It's about eradicating food fraud, and I will tell you more about the contribution of this ambitious Horizon Europe project today. And my name is Saskia van Roep. That's already mentioned. I'm a full professor of food supply chain integrity at University College Dublin in Ireland, and I'm coordinating this EU initiative. Just for those that may not be so familiar with food fraud, that is the world of the truth and lies, and that is where I work in, have been working in for the past 20 years. I've seen a lot of analytical detection methods being developed, but also more and more the interest in food fraud prevention in the past decade. So what is it exactly? Just a brief video to explain it to you.
This is an apple. Some people might try to tell you that it's a banana. They might scream banana, banana, banana over and over and over again. They might put banana in all caps. You might even start to believe that this is a banana. But it's not. This is an apple.
Actually an ad of CNN about fake news, but it works very well for food fraud too. And of course, distinguishing an apple from a banana is not so difficult, but as soon as that apple is processed or becomes an ingredient, it's an entirely different story. And to define food fraud in a simple manner, there are some official definitions, but in a simple manner, it's the deliberate, it's a purposely mismatch between the product and its label to deceive customers, and it's for economic gain, personal gain. And unfortunately, it's quite common. And why would we then care about this food fraud? Now, that's because of financial loss of the companies that play by the rules, and also those may be, their reputation may be damaged. It also leads to unfair competition for those that work according to the rules. It ruins consumer confidence. Think about the horse meat scandal or the fipronil crisis in the Netherlands. That's certainly affecting the confidence of consumers in our food supply chains. And some people pay with their health or even with their lives with this kind of practices. And the problem is that food fraud has been with us, of course, for thousands of years. It's nothing new. It started perhaps with adding a few stones to increase the weight of a basket of fruits. But with the globalization and industrialization in the 19th century, but more and more globalization at this stage, the complexity of our food supply chains is ever increasing. And some supply chains are very, very misty. And this is still perhaps unfavorable situation when it comes to food crimes. And it is a matter of balancing if we want to look into food fraud prevention, looking at all the factors that play a role, for instance. But nowadays, we are also dealing with all these geopolitical events that follow each other up faster and faster, it seems. That started with the pandemic, then followed by the war in Ukraine and Gaza, and now all the unrest in the markets through the activities in the US. We see these events following each other up faster and faster, and that means also that constantly the situation is changing, also meaning all these factors are constantly changing because supply chains are changing, supply demand is changing, prices are changing, and that also means that companies need to change the focus of their programs, and not once a year or once every 5 years, but probably every month now. So that is certainly why food fraud also needs more and more attention. And luckily, we have developed a lot of research and innovation over the past decade or decades on food fraud prevention, especially in the detection area. And there have been numerous projects on food authenticity, food integrity, and food fraud, and also traceability, which may be one of the control measures, like authentic food and spice, the food integrity, AuthentNet, and also some parts of projects like Titan now, but also Trust Food, which focusing on blockchain technologies, for instance, and the educational materials, Trusty Food, Watson, also strengthened supply chains. So there has been a lot of projects in the past. However, what we develop in science is not what is implemented in the real world. And there's that gap exists obviously in many areas, but certainly also in the food fraud prevention and detection area. So what we know and what we do, that there's a gap between the two. And just to give you an example, we have been working on fingerprint methods using pattern recognition for about 20 years in the research domain. And nowadays, when you look at publications of food authenticity methods, half of them, 50%, deal with these fingerprint methods, whereas these methods are only 1 or 2% of the methods that are used by commercial labs. So there is certainly quite a big gap here. And that has to do, to a large extent, to communication between the different groups. So can we consider ourselves in this food fraud prevention detection area a socially closed network? I think the answer is no. We may see, like I show here, we may see some innovations here in academia with large food manufacturers, where usually the funding sits, but the contacts with regulators are much worse. And so with retailers and perhaps, with caterers or brokers or certification schemes, there is hardly any contacts. So there's certainly a gap there. And that gap is, we hope to fill at least a part of it by this new Horizon Europe initiative, the European Food Fraud Community of Practice from outset to operation. And I would like to demonstrate that with our landscape. And you will see that in this video, and I will talk a bit at the same time. This is our landscape. It's Lego. You probably remember it from your childhood. Most people do. And this is our landscape with here all kinds of organizations that are not connected with any others whatsoever. There are some others that work together, for instance, in European projects with different colors, different backgrounds. They may work like this. Now, if we look at this, it's a bit wobbly, and that demonstrates the current volatile situation. And with the regulators, they talk to each other in the food fraud network. There's also some people that are watching here and don't like to be connected to others. There may be the Food Authenticity Network with different organizations here. Here we got our scientists looking out at the world through the window. And here a big initiative, that's the Food Industry Intelligence Network in UK, where they share data on food fraud between companies. And then not to forget, in our landscape here, we also have our fraudsters that mingle with us and may try to get included in some of our networks as well. So that's our landscape, and the aim of the European Food Fraud Community of Practice is not to replicate any of these networks. It aims to fill the gaps, to connect people that are not connected now, that are some are really in silos, and others they may reach out already, but we try to fill those gaps. So the aim is to enhance food fraud prevention and detection. It's a 3-year project that started in January. We facilitate encounters and we encourage and create new conversations between organizations and existing networks. And we collect, collate, and provide access to resources. So we're collecting research and innovation and make them available through our EFF hub. And in the end, it's the intention to sustain the community and make sure that the beast will get its own legs and continues in the future. Now, to have a kickstart, we included in EFF-CoP from the start a number of existing networks. You know, those pillars that you saw in my Lego landscape. So, for instance, there are some researchers and academics like ourselves, but also the Food Authenticity Network is a partner. We have a cluster of EU projects represented. The Food Fraud Network of the regulators is involved. The Food Industry Intelligence Network, that blue block, IFOAM, the organic sector, certification scheme consortium, a commercial lab consortium, an organization representing the SME organizations internationally, worldwide, and SAFE, which represents a large food businesses group that work together. So that helps us to reach out very quickly and to set up these events and connections. Now, we have a number of activities scheduled that is starting up the network structure, identifying the needs, collecting the existing research and innovation and teaching resources, develop some new ones, and have these interactive events, hold these interactive events, and finally also some dissemination communication about the project externally. And together with all of this, we built a future research agenda and an exploitation plan that is managed by Deloitte to make sure that it's also economically viable. So we started off with our kickoff in January, and that was in Amsterdam in the Beurs of van Berla. It's the former stock exchange in really the heart of the city. And that was also a bit unusual compared to other EU project kickoffs. So we started off with a ball of wool that was representing our network, that was handed over to everybody to connect us. Then there was also a jigsaw puzzle that was put together with a logo. We had some keyword charades organized by the work package leaders, and to get to know each other, there were art posters made by all the participants about their organizations, and those were presented in an art gallery, and we walked the gallery together to introduce ourselves to each other. And it was quite lively. And so was the dinner. It was not a sit-down dinner, but we had to cook ourselves for all of us together. That was also a quite lively event, very enjoyable to say. And this was our instructor, and I can certainly recommend this type of workshop for any European project. Now, but of course, there was also some serious thinking and developing ideas of how we could move on and take the next steps, of course. And a highlight of that kickoff, and that was towards the end, and these people didn't know, most of them did not know each other, 24 hours before this. We had 2 students organizing a flash mob and teaching us a dance, which I will show you here. So you see that if people don't know each other and carrying out all kinds of activities together have become a group within a very short period, and also start talking about the serious issues, of course, surrounding food fraud. Now, the next event was last week here with us in Dublin, where we had a side event to the Global Food Safety Initiative conference. Again, lively in a pub environment, where we spoke to food industry leaders and regulators that attended the DFSI conference. And there were also technology providers there and academics. Again, with some interesting talks here also by Quincy Lissauer of SA, for instance, and Alden Hilbrand of FSCC 22000 certification scheme. Now, we expect many more of these virtual and live events, training courses based on gamification, living labs, some podcasts, webinars, a food fraud incident preparedness workshop, a food fraud festival that we will organize in June next year, some virtual cafes, and also some activities dedicated to the young scientists, the early stage scientists. Now that concludes my introduction to the European Food Fraud Community of Practice. You're very welcome to become a member. You can email this email address. It's free of charge to join us. It will give you access to the hub with the resources and also early announcements of the events, where we will work together on a number of food fraud issues. And of course, you can follow us on LinkedIn if you scan this QR code. That completes my presentation. Thank you very much for attending.
Thank you very much, Saskia, for the presentation. Very nice, animated, and nice ideas. So we learned something through Lego. Thank you so much. I already see a question coming in from Isabel. Please, Isabel. We don't yet hear you, but give you the time. A little bit of time. I can leave it a setting. That will be. Let me see if I can unmute you. No? Sorry, Isabel, I see your hand and I see that the question is coming in. It is not in my power to activate your microphone, sorry. If I could, I would.
Or perhaps you can type it in the chat.
Yes, Isabel, do you mind typing in your question in the chat? Or in the Q&A session? For sure, during the breakout groups, normally everybody's microphone will be activated so that there will be really a nice opportunity. Take your time. I will just talk through it in the meantime. So Saskia, can you maybe say a little bit more about your community of practice? So it's a project of 4 years, I assume, as well?
3 years, yeah.
3 years. 3 years. Wonderful. Yeah. So with Titan, we already we're going to enter into our final year. So our final conference will be next year in June. So hopefully we can have a collaboration there, or we can have some of your activities also presented there. That we already an invitation at this moment. Yeah. Isabel, I'm just babbling away to give you the time to grab the question. If anybody else has a question, I'm checking the Q&A. Don't hesitate to put them in. No, nothing yet. So I can see that through the animated, the World Cafe, a festival and so on, really an animation to bring the community together and exchange on information. That's the key purpose of the project as well. I don't see anything yet from Isabel coming. Neither for the others. Otherwise, I propose that we maybe we're a little bit ahead of time, but it's nice because we can discuss more in the breakout rooms. I propose otherwise that we go into the breakout rooms and maybe Manuela, you can put Isabel in the group together with Saskia so that then she can ask the question directly in the group. Does that work, Manuela?
Yep. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah. Wonderful. So how this is going to work? So the group will be split up into randomly, except for Isabel will be allocated to a group, and then we get more into depth in the discussions together with Saskia, and I will be moderating the group on the healthy dietary choices and restriction of marketing to children.
Sorry, just to make sure, Isabel wanted to ask Saskia a question. Was it right?
Yes. But her microphone doesn't seem to work. Could you maybe activate her microphone, Manuela?
Yeah,
please?
it's activated. Isabel's microphone is activated. I think it's just that she's muted or something with her computer, but there's nothing else I can do.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's see in the breakout rooms maybe. We will have 20 minutes in the breakout rooms, and then we'll do a debrief afterwards in the full group. So I hope you stay with us, and then see you in the breakout room, I would say. Emmanuel, you can split us up. Oh, sorry, Isabel. I see you're not muted, but we can't hear you. Hopefully in the breakout room it will work, and otherwise maybe after we come back, it might be solved. Saskia, how did it go in your group? So now we'll do the debrief, and I'll give you the floor so you can share first how the discussion was within.
We had a good discussion, and we started actually off as with the questions of Isabel Hoffman that she could not ask, because her microphone was muted.
Yes.
And initially we had that discussion about businesses that may commit fraud to damage other businesses. Examples, but also in that area was, for instance, Parmesan cheese. And then we followed up with some, with one of the discussion topics about the prevention of food fraud, and perhaps even the key solution would be if there would be more focus on the well-being of people, on moral compasses rather than economic gain. But in our capitalistic society, that may still be a distant future. But certainly that would help if there is more emphasis on ethics, because that's basically, of course, at the root of the problem. But it was also suggested if there were more sanctions for organizations that commit fraud, they would feel more their responsibility, and that may also work as a prevention in the future. And then finally, the control of supply chains, using, for instance, spectral measurements, generating fingerprints, and then securing them by using blockchain so that they cannot be modified anymore along the chain, was also suggested as one of the options. So we had a lively discussion, I think, with especially the three of us, Andrea and Isabel and myself, but it was good to exchange these ideas. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. You even get an animation of the hearts. Indeed, Andrea enjoyed the discussion. Wonderful. Thank you, Saskia, for animating. In our group, we had a little bit more of people as well, and we discussed, one of the first questions was, which foods should preferably be restricted to ensure children's health? And then there was a first rhetorical question on saying, why should it be restricted only to children? And why is there an age limit? Because should we also, even to adults, promote actually unhealthy foods? It was stressed also that, of course, whatever we do, there should be data validation and verification behind it when these restrictions are done, or when somebody claims or communicates on children. In the group, there was a proposal that indeed the regulation should be based on one or more ingredients, even if during the presentation, Maijaliisa also said, like, there's no one single food which is unhealthy, but it is the whole diet. And from a psychological perspective, it was also put forward that indeed we should not forbid anything, especially to children. You make it so much more attractive, but also forbidding something has a very high psychological impact on something. So it's rather about you should limit the intake, eat with moderation, and so on. We did think about a little bit like, okay, there are already policies put in place. Which ones are now really the most impactful? And then we should look back at what happened with the sugar tax, or what is happening now with Nutri-Score. And a lot of analysis have been made on these, so we should take learnings from that. Another question that was discussed was, how does the exposure to and the power of food marketing affect children's health? I believe everybody in this webinar, and after listening to Maijaliisa, we all agree that of course, the marketing has an impact on behavior. And we were in our group, several with us who have children, so we were sharing more our perspective as a parent. What do we see happening? And we are now even more concerned by social media and actually what is happening on television. So that this social media was really a key area of concern. We did talk about also which policy measures are thought to have the highest impact. So that's why we said, let's look at Nutri-Score and the sugar tax, what happened. Here we discussed that indeed, again, social media should definitely have a policy regarding that, and that it should only be on social media, but every channel where children are exposed to marketing should be restricted in that sense. So the discussion was indeed sharing of our concerns and thoughts and what we saw happening with that. And I believe that with this, we come to an end of this Titan webinar. I do hope that you mark already the next date in your agenda. It will be linked to another key area of expertise, but still always in light of Titan, which is about digital innovations to enhance transparency across the food supply chain. So here you can see already on the screen the selected speakers, where Edward puts in a lot of effort to really get key people around in these webinars. And with this, please do sign up for our newsletter or to keep informed about all upcoming events. Soon we will also communicate the date of our final conference next year in June. So mark your agenda already for that event. And I see that there's no more hands, no more questions. So I believe with this that we can end the webinar with this, and the recordings will be made available on the Titan website. Thank you very much to especially our speakers. So Saskia, thank you and good luck with your project as well. I'm sure that we will be still meeting each other and create synergies between the two projects with Titan and your community of practice. And also to Maijaliisa, who's already teaching probably to our students and followers. Thank you very much and wish you a very nice afternoon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Bye, Joe.